Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. With me tonight, Billy Beeman and Jake Kornblum. How you guys doing?
Good. Just want to say, sorry to the Discord. I have been absent. I've mentioned that before. I do want to get back in there. Just been super busy. And Jake, hit me with a bunch of work on some prospects. So, just fighting internally here a little bit. But no, I'm kidding. I'm excited to be here. How you doing, Jake?
I am doing well. Part of this whole absent father thing that you've done to the Discord means that you have to work in other ways, and I'm forcing the work through the prospect profiles. I looked at who you've worked on, and I was like, Uriah hit us up
throw
with
4 dudes you haven't done yet.
No, wait a second. I made it an open question. I made it an open question to the group. Since you were an absent father, you didn't reply for 24 hours. Uriah responded. He was like, "What about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt?" I was like, "Sweet. Let's talk about some other guys that aren't always talked about right now." And unfortunately, it looks like 2 of them are kind of picking up a lot of steam because our man Matt Waldman dropped the RSP on April 1st. And so there's been a lot of buzz from a lot of his prospect profiles. That being said, I am super excited for today.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to, I need to grab the copy of the RSP.
Yeah, I'm going to need that.
Pay full price. Yeah. No, you're right. It's like, I sent the money for that already. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to grab that. I'll grab that the next day or 2 here. But the funny thing is I don't want to read it yet. You know what I mean? Honestly, I want to get through everything and then I'll read it. So then then we'll have them on, of course, and we'll discuss some, whatever differences we have, but also just some prospecting and stuff like that. That'll be fun. But no, I'm excited about that. It's going to be a good time.
Cool. Well, let's get started. Let's hop in some news, nonsense, not a whole lot of news going on. It's that time of year, but unless you want talk rumors, which I think are just a waste of time.
Oh, the worst.
Mock drafts, rumors. I hate those, all those. But let's continue with what we were talking about last week, a little bit about ourselves again, or who we are as players. This is my favorite type of discussion.
As you can tell.
I did not add this week. I promise this was not me. I swear.
I was listening back.
It's good. It's some self-reflecting, I guess. So we're to discussion our dynasty identity. So how do you think that people perceive you as a dynasty player, especially with those who you play with in multiple leagues? And on top of that, how do you want them to perceive you? And how do you think you're identified? That's pretty deep. We could take it question by question. But of course, I'm going to start off with Billy.
Because I'm the culprit here. Yeah, yes. Sure. Yeah. So this is a tough one. I don't really know how how I'm perceived as a dynasty player, and I said especially with those who you play multiple leagues with, because it's hard to hide your identity that way. You know what I mean? When you're in multiple leagues, it's harder to do the thing that Jake's talked about, where you kind of transform and change league to league. It's you can only do it so much, I feel like, across 3 or 4 leagues. It's somebody's either going to catch you, check you, or you're going to fall back into your ways a little bit. So they're going to know you as a player. You know what I mean? And so I think for the ones who know me well, probably think, and I'm using a nice term here, that I'm frugal, but probably cheap. And don't send, and I'm not even just speaking about you guys, though you may think this too, but that I only send offers that are in my favor. And so I imagine that's how I'm viewed. And I would prefer that they saw that I was viewed as someone who is very calculated about the decisions he makes, and only makes moves that are good for his teams, but not that is cheap and trying to get one over on you every time. But I do feel like that's probably how I'm perceived.
Next, Jake, what do you think about that?
I'm only.
I mean, anybody can comment on this too, for sure. Feel free.
Yeah, it probably is really beneficial too for us to to have an open dialogue with each other about our own gameplay, only because I'm not trying to discredit or change or manipulate. I just do think that probably both Uriah and I have a really good understanding of what it's like to be in leagues with you. We unfortunately are,
sure.
With my still relatively small exposure of 11 leagues, I think 5 of them are with Billy in them. So it's I'm gonna have, unfortunately, a lot of experience with you. The reason I was laughing, the reason I was laughing is because I forgot. It was someone that's in one of our leagues, and they reached out to me, and they were just like, interacting with Billy with trades is really challenging. I was like, I'm gonna be real with you. I think I'm in like 4 or 5 leagues with him. I think we might have over 4 years, maybe 2 or 3 completed trades, and I don't even think that's necessarily because. I think it is because of how you described it. I think you're very calculated, and I think you're like calculated sometimes almost to a fault. Like you're so determined to not lose out sometimes in the interim that you're so far like removed from what the future could look like that it's like no matter what this circumstance is, like I'm going to back away from it. So yeah, I would say that it is perceived like that from others because they've come to me and brought it up. But I do think that interacting with you like that has been the case as well.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say before we can move on, but I think I actually don't mind the perception that it's challenging to trade with me. I actually don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. I guess it could be a turnoff, obviously, but I'm fine with that. Like I do kind of want it to be a challenge, and I don't want it to be that easy to like guess like necessarily like my my point of attack, I guess, at any given trade. So I feel like there is that advantage in that. So I'm not too ashamed of that that quality, though. I know from just like some outspoken others in other leagues that that they may think lesser of me. So yeah, and I don't know if that's necessarily something you want to like actively change. Like you are who you are. You try to, over time, like people are gonna catch on to some of your trends. But we can move on. How do you think, Jake? Or what do you think about this question, Jake? Or Uriah, whoever wants to go. Oh, okay.
I feel like it's actually really challenging because to that segment that you were referencing back, I do think that if I'm in multiple leagues with people, they're probably even more perplexed by me because I do interact in those leagues differently. That is really challenging, honestly. Like dependent on the league itself, I would say more often than not, I am a potentially overly engaged other antagonist in the league. I think that's what I would probably be considered is an antagonist instead of a protagonist. I am constantly there to try and dismantle patterns that are happening within leagues and tend to be a succubus of other people's momentums. So like if I see things are being unraveled, I'll typically try and like dive in head first and try and steal some things off the top. But outside of that, I don't know. I think I'm relatively easy to make trades with. I would say that I'm the most active trader of the 3 of us. So I don't know if that's because I'm making trades or maybe I'm just losing out on everything I do. I don't really know. But maybe that's why people love
there's probably a balance between you and I somewhere in between.
I'm sure there's a balance between the 3 of us. If we stuck all 3 of us on,
I meant in that regard specifically, though.
In Hercules, I think that's the movie with the dog with the 3 heads. It wasn't a dog, but monster with the 3 heads that look like a dog. Yeah. That'd be us if we could create a perfect monster in Dynasty fantasy football. But yeah, I think that's right. I don't know. Do you guys have a different take?
No, I mean, I see it, especially the part where you say Hydra. You're trying to break up
Dynasty Hydra. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think I would say your hit rate on at least commenting on trades that go down in the leagues that I'm in with you, you're not batting 1,000, but you're close. So, and I think that does matter. Like, I mean, I don't really. People take the comments after a trade's been completed. Like, I do think that they will either question the trade that they made, or the person who the other people in the league will look at it and be like, "Oh shit, I didn't really see it that way," but like. Whether you mean to do it or not, like I think that Jake typically always says something about the trade, and it either gets people to talk about it or think about it or whatever he's doing. It's not even necessary for the league to even say anything after the trade's been done, but Jake will, right? And it does something. right? It invokes some sort of emotion or at least some sort of thought process in anybody else's minds who sees the trade first, where they're trying to process like just what went down, and then like the first thing they see after that is something that Jake has said. And so I totally agree. Like there's a level of maybe not antagonist, but some of the comments are definitely antagonistic, but just at least not like, oh, hey, there's a trade that went down, but like there's a trade that went down and then Jake's gonna be like, oh, fuck, well, there you go. Like you're fucked for the next few years or something like that. And then so it gets people to kind of think about it a little bit more. So
yeah. What did you say at the beginning, Jake? Like overactive? Is that what you said? Overactive manager?
Yeah.
Or I think that's a good description. I think that's a good, like, and not in a negative way. I think that's a good description of like how somebody would perceive like the way that you play Dynasty, right? Like you're very active, you're very like a lot of effort, like you're putting in the time, you're checking like people's shit. Dynasty historian is a very, very good label for kind of the way that you go about it. So I mean, I think that's probably pretty spot on. Is that how you want them to perceive you?
Oof, that's a good question. No, I think it's probably a mixture of ADHD mixed with some of my like obsessive compulsive interactions with my teams themselves. Like I'm just like, I can fix it. I can make it better. I know that there's a path forward to it. I know what the path looks like. I'm constantly trying to get there. And I don't think I ever feel at ease knowing that there's potentially always moments that I could be feeding off of something else or getting and gaining new information from my league mates. And so, that's really kind of my general approach to most of the leagues that I'm in. For instance, though, there is a new league that I've started and I haven't done anything. Like I've intentionally done nothing this entire offseason. I haven't engaged with a single other team. I haven't sent out a single offer. And I won't dive into the why yet, but like for me, I think it's really important to continue to kind of go at some of the past dialogue that we've had about, the different personalities. Cause I do think that there is something to be seen or learned from about, we don't talk about this person, but almost like the inactive manager in how they impact leagues. So yeah, I'm going to try and learn a little bit more about what that looks like and how to potentially take advantage of that. But anyway, Uriah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would assume that probably people perceive me as to the point. I do not really ever engage in trade conversations. I think probably the most dialogue I'll have before a trade gets complete is really like 2 back and forths, 3 back and forths, if that. I don't send trade offers that will lead to conversations long. So I typically try to send trades that are really close to being done. And if it takes more than one like rebuttal afterwards, probably not getting anything done with me. And I noticed this in the DMs I get from people where if we've dealt in the past, they just ask me like right away, like, hey, is this close? Is this something you want to get done? And it's just like a yes or no, like that's not close for me, or I'm not really interested. I just want to hold on to that guy. I get that a lot now. It's like, hey, is this somebody you want to move off of? Or are you interested? Like, instead of like sending me something and trying to talk. So I think that people hopefully view me as somebody that's like, if it's close, we're going to get it done. If it's not, I don't care. Like, I don't really have time to sit here and chit chat. Good or bad, but that's just who I am. That's who I am in real life. How do I want them to perceive me? Just the same way, like same guy in real life, same guy in our trade discussions, same guy in the league chat and all that stuff. Not too serious, but I feel like if you want to get a deal done, like let's get really, really close to it and see if it works out for us. Like that's all. Like I'm not sitting there trying to penny pinch, and I'm not sitting there trying to get penny pinched myself. So most of my trades are done with very, very little back and forth. And I think that anybody who's played with me a long time knows that. So good or bad.
I like how there's 3 of us here, and both of you, your perception and the way you want people to perceive you is about the same, but mine's different. I don't know what that says about me.
But also, it's time to look in the mirror.
You're more hungry.
I also found it interesting that we all kind of, or the conversation all ended up kind of dissolving into like our trade interactions with people and how it's perceived. But I wonder if there's anything to like the perception of how we build our teams too. Like, and that's a deeper conversation we don't have to get into now, maybe a topic for another episode, but something to kind of just think about back of your mind, like maybe how people perceive your team building and if that positively, negatively impacts, or if there's any actionable information on that, something we'll talk about in another episode.
Cool. Good stuff. Also, I was just thinking about this, like for anybody who's listening, like you should have some sort of personality. You should understand, I guess, like your other 11 league mates, kind of, you should have a personality picked out for them by now. Like you should kind of know who they are. I mean, if it's your first year, like, no, you're not going to know, but hopefully by the end of the season, you've at least touched bases with everybody and you kind of understand who they are. If you don't, then you're just going to go into these things kind of blind, especially when it comes to trade talks. So, anyway.
It's a great point, Uriah. And I don't know who put this on the sheet under it, but like that, this is a great exercise for listeners as well. I do think that along the same lines of what you're saying, I think like if you think about how you're perceived and how others perceive you, you'll like almost inherently think of what like you think of others and how they're interacting with the league and everything. I think it kind of all goes hand in hand if you think about it, but it's only going to help you if you go through this exercise as well. So I appreciate y'all for indulging me in that. I'm sure we'll kind of bring it back on the team building kind of thing down the road. Cool.
Next thing here, real quick, it's tax season. Actually, my buddy at work still hasn't filed his taxes. I'm like, hey, it takes 20 minutes. I don't know what you're waiting for. He was joking.
People who don't get money back aren't in any hurry.
Well, it's just do it. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, unless you have like a ton of like random like investments and multiple jobs and this and that, like I could understand like those people, but for the majority of folks, it really is like a 20-minute task.
I was done immediately.
Yeah, just do it.
I was like, yeah, let me just get this over with and move on. Yeah.
But so the question here is, are other deals to be had at this stage of the season? Are there deals with depth chart uncertainty or betting odds are in our favor? And are there certain positions you are completely out on in March, April, every year?
I like this one.
So, yeah. Billy.
Sure. Are there deals to be done at this stage of the season? I think so. There's definitely like places we can hit the depth chart uncertainty, but in general, I think there's definitely opportunities this time of season. I noticed in kind of the conversation about trading picks this year into next year. I've seen quite a few like minor ones too, trading like late picks from this year into next year, vice versa. There's kind of ways that you can do those kind of things, like a fourth this year and a mid third this year for a third and a fourth next year, kind of just swapping it going into next year, right? Hoping that, you either get the same or a higher pick, but it's also in a class that you feel more comfortable with kind of thing. So I like, I think that those kind of deals are always possible. Personally, like I've always said, I'm trying to kind of avoid running backs this time of year for the most part. I'm seeing like deals like Ken Walker and something for like, a 26 first and something. And I'm like, I don't really know if I want to send away my 26 firsts for Ken Walker, though. It's like good player. Don't get me wrong. Good player, but like situation deteriorated a little bit. There's like a whole slew of reasons why I don't know if I'm super comfortable trading for a 26 first straight plus, for a Ken Walker this time of year. Like, it's just not necessary for me. I think you can get that done any time almost. And maybe with the 27, even after like just kind of waiting into the season. So there's just like a lot of opportunity, I think, in general right now, if you want to make some moves, but I don't know if like acquiring running backs is a huge advantage at this point in the year. But again, like you shouldn't like, send off any position. Like I'm willing to take on any position at the right price, but yeah, I'm generally avoiding those. What about you guys?
Yeah. So, the first thing that came to mind was when you're talking about the roster uncertainty, and then you hear about, and right now you could go shoot, I don't know if you guys follow the guy, Kent Waybrock. Anyways, he has a website where he tracks all visits to teams, all the players. He's been doing it for years and years. Brilliant guy. Well, if you keep the track, visits to teams, typically 2024, 2023, or you could go back to when a team actually drafted running back. So he goes back to the Jets and see when they drafted Breece Hall, and then go look at the number of running backs that they had visited that year, and then the following year see a plummet because obviously they don't need a running back. That's a tool that you kind of use to this. Well, so right now we're talking about Breece Hall. They got new coaches and stuff there, and they're talking about being timeshares, stuff like that. You have Breece Hall being like, what the fuck, am I getting traded? I think now's a really good time to go out there and try to get Breece Hall. He's not toast, as Jake said earlier. It's just there's some uncertainty. And then you have Tyreek Hill throwing up the deuces on the social media and talking about getting traded. And even though like 3 months ago, he came out in a statement and said, I want to be in Miami forever. Well, what that's doing to people is, shit, is Tyreek Hill going to be there? Is he not going to be there? Is this going to be a guy like, I feel like that's a way for you to either pick up cheap Tyreek Hill or follow it and fall into it and go out and get Waddle. Like, there are certain situations like this where this does happen. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily tax season, but these are discounts that I'm seeing in real life. Like I'm seeing on the social media, people are actually truly reacting to this information. Whether I think they should be or not, I don't know. But situations like this don't happen all the time. But I think that's a way that you could try to get a deal done. As far as the running back thing, I think we do got to be kind of careful going out there and trading for running backs who are potentially replaceable, especially with this upcoming draft. It's a little off topic, but I just think there's a situation there where you might be able to see a running back that you will perceive as safe, and then I think could get easily absurd with the right running back hitting a team. A little off the rails there, but what do you got, Jake?
No, I think that's all on point. And when I wrote this out, I didn't even think of someone like a Tyreek Hill and, you know, how quickly you could probably get a discount on someone like him or potentially take advantage of the rumors and get into Waddle even while his value is down. I was actually thinking of players that were kind of hyped up last year and died off due to a lot of the offseason news already. So folks like Jordan Whittington on Los Angeles, he probably had like a good 5-day window where folks knew that, you know, Cooper Kupp was gone. Maybe they had like a 12-day window, but Cooper Kupp was gone and then Devontae Adams got signed.
True.
Or Jalen McMillan before Chris Godwin got re-signed. Those folks who are now back on value declines, are they profiles that you're willing to get into if at cheap enough rates, knowing that there's still a large part of the community that's really into them and they're still, you know, really young assets? But I do like the more premium asset conversation. I think that there's probably both sides of this. You know, you could think of guys like Stone Smart. You could think of Brenton Strange. Like there's a whole slew of them that you can probably manipulate on both sides of the coin, get into assets that have promising storylines, but you could also get out of assets that you might not believe in that have promising storylines attached to them. But regardless, I think the depth chart uncertainty is definitely something that is going to be even more real post-draft. And I think it's one of those crazy situations, to Uriah's point. I think while I was reading through the running back portion of the RSP, Matt Baldwin has, I think, somewhere up to like 30 NFL, basically like rotational caliber players. And that's pretty insane to think about, just like how that could make a pretty massive impact on the running back landscape. Not saying that all 30 are going to hit, obviously, but even if you took half of them and they make impact onto, let's say, 15 rosters, like that's huge. And so putting that into context and like trying to get in or out of aging running backs, guys like Alvin Kamara, guys like even, I hate calling him aging, but like even David Montgomery, yeah, his situation is stable right now, but could easily be gone probably after the season, even with the extension. it just puts things into a little bit grayer of boxes, I think, than what we initially were mentally aware of as the season kind of developed in 2024. That all being said, I wouldn't say I'm ever out on a specific position at any given time. I do think for at the right cost, there's always a way to get into any single asset. And almost to the question before, like, I do think that is also how I'm perceived as a dynasty player, is like, I'm willing to get into almost any profile. And so it's really hard to understand why I'm getting into a certain asset. Like, I'll never really be completely off of people that I don't even like. For instance, I drafted Keon Coleman last year. Like, I hated Keon Coleman. You can watch me talk about him on the show. Truly despise him. I think I drafted him in 2 different startups and traded him away before the season even started. So it's like, as long as there's ways for me to get into assets that I know I can potentially move based off the cost that I'm acquiring them at, I'm all for it. And I think that's how I see tax season. It's like, if the tax is hitting right, then I'm willing to get into it.
Yeah, and I think what's a good kind of this is good for like the analogy here, but like, you're willing to do the work. Like Uriah is talking about, like, some people don't want to put the work in and are going to wait way too long to do their taxes. So if you're going to do that and you're going to buy a Keon Coleman, somebody who has like a high tax rate, you want to make sure that you get rid of that, because, you know, you're going to be paying that bill potentially, or you're going to be eating that bill rather. Like, Jake is going to buy these guys and get rid of them that fast. Like, honestly, even for me, sometimes it's a little overwhelming to think about doing that. Like, okay, I'm going to go take an asset that I don't like, but I need to make sure I get rid of him. Right? Like, now I need to make sure I get rid of him for a good price. And Jake, I think I remember in one league, at least, it was like you may have got like a first plus something actually decent for him or something like that. I think in maybe League of Legends. I forgot which league it was in, but I remember seeing a trade like that go down, which is a great deal in my opinion. And so like that, but you had to make a move fast on that, because if you waited for his rookie season to, you know, happen, you ain't getting that most likely, because he did have a pretty underwhelming season, you know? And so I just think that, like, you got to put the work in if you're going to make those moves. Yeah. And I think that works perfectly with this topic.
Yeah, I'll say I remember the trade just because I'm a sicko. This was probably like literally like 11 months ago. It was Keon Coleman, who I drafted at like the 207. It was a different type of league, but he fell to the 207, and I traded him for a next year second plus Calvin Ridley. So I got a free Calvin Ridley, used the same second basically that I had already acquired, or I drafted Keon with, just added the second, then a free Calvin Ridley on top, and then ended up trading Calvin Ridley, you know, later. But yeah,
it's good work. File your taxes, folks. You have 7 days.
Do the work.
Yeah, you do. Holy shit.
7 days. All right. Cool. So prospect profiles. This is gonna be good. This is we will be doing 4 running backs, and at least 4 of them you probably never really heard of. Hopefully these guys are what people would typically call sleepers, I guess, in a way, right? You know, they're not top 5 guys, except for I do really like Damien Martinez. But we will start out with Tahj Brooks, Texas Tech. What do you got?
Jake, you hop in.
Cool. Yeah. Man, talk of the internet right now. Tahj Brooks, Texas Tech. I watched his Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and West Virginia tape. I will say that for the sake of time, since we're covering 4 prospects, I'm going to be a little bit more concise than I typically am. So time me on that. But basically from Tahj, generally, I really liked the profile. I thought he was a really exciting prospect. He really had a ton of guided elusiveness. And by guided, I mean, he's very determined with the actual holes that he ends up moving into. Tons of patience. I loved how he waits for blocks to form before attacking. Shifty footwork, plus his ankle weight, I thought handled super, super well. Very strong hands. I thought he was a very reliable pass catcher and was used quite a fair amount. He carries tackles well for someone his size. He's a little bit undersized, which I think is one of the reasons why people aren't super, super high on him. But I thought he carries weight well from tacklers, as well as when he's actually building off of the tackle, he's actually able to push off of that weight really well. It reminded me at points of almost like Maurice Jones-Drew when he was like really young coming out of UCLA, when he would just like kind of like hold on to weight on top of him and he kind of carry those guys till they fell off and then push through. He doesn't have extreme strength like that, but he definitely was at a much higher caliber than kind of what I was seeing throughout a lot of this prospect profile window. So yeah, what did you see, Billy? And you're muted.
Oh yeah, I know. I was typing.
Yeah,
I didn't want to.
Yeah, no
didn't want to make noise, but I appreciate that. Okay, yeah, Tahj Brooks. So I know he's talk of the town. I don't think I was as impressed with him, though. He got actually a pretty decent score for like this class. Nothing overly impressive, but what I called him was a master navigator, outstanding vision, patience are his best. Outstanding vision plus patience are his best attributes. I think he lacks plus athleticism despite great short area quickness. He displays calculated evasiveness, the ability to kind of recognize, anticipate defenders, set them up, make a move. And I think, he does a really good job with the footwork. I think the fundamentals are there. Like part of it is the short, that short area quickness, the ability to kind of make those moves in a tight window. I don't think he's like overly agile necessarily. Like he's not super laterally quick or dynamic, but he still eludes defenders at a pretty high rate, which is, pretty impressive. And I think it's a testament to his footwork and his vision. I do think he's a quality pass catcher. I agree with Jake on that. I wasn't really like overly impressed with like, and again, these are running backs, so you're grading route technique differently than you are wide receiver. But like, I wasn't really impressed with like the route running or anything like that. The transition speed was fine. The hands were really good. You do see some like downfield ball tracking and whatnot, which is atypical for a running back. So definitely get some good marks for that. Pass protection, just above average, tenacious, but definitely could use some development in that regard, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, I see that there is definitely potential here. I think that he lacks some power, in my opinion, lacks some speed. I don't think he's amazing after contact. I think he's good at avoiding contact, and he's good at creating yards generally. But I think once the contact hits, it kind of breaks down a little bit. And I don't think he's, super athletic where he can kind of just like break away from defenders and whatnot. So I liked him, but I just wasn't overly impressed. Like I think, some of the counterparts in the community are. Sorry, Uriah. Thoughts?
Yeah, so
I wasn't looking at the screen. See, you need to tell him, not me.
Yards after contact per attempt is 3.04, pretty mid. PFF's elusive rating is 67.5, not great. Missed tackle force percentage is 20.2.
Yeah,
again, not great. Yards per team attempt, yards per team pass attempt, or yards per team attempt, 1.7. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty bright side. So I guess he's getting used in the offense. Featured, I guess, at some point in the offense would be my takeaway. 0.67 yards per route run, not good. Breakaway percentage 38.9 is fine, and he's a late declare. By the numbers, it's pretty meh. So
you're off screen, Uriah, just so you know. But yeah, I do agree with that assessment, that analysis of the numbers here, and it kind of does line up with what I saw in terms of the film. Like I just don't think, after contact and breaking away from defenders is his strong suit. I think his strong suit is kind of processing, and then his ability to kind of avoid the contact and gain yards. And so I think he's good at that. I think there's a place for that in the league for sure. I'm just not sure it's like an every down kind of thing. So I don't know if, he's going to be on line for a full workload and a consistent workload, every week. I think it's more of going to be, a community backfield there. So I don't know, almost no matter where he goes, we have no idea where it's going to be. He would have to fall into a really good situation or a really specific situation, I feel like, to kind of get bumped up for me in that regard. But yeah, just I'm not in love with the film, and now looking at the analytics, it doesn't have me any more encouraged. But any final thoughts on Brooks before we move on?
No, I just want to say, like, I think it's a really interesting conversation to be had, and maybe not today, but something for us to, keep a pin in, is the idea of, as older play callers age out and we move further towards probably an even more hybrid space for the sport itself, do we see running backs that maybe aren't necessarily, so dominant in terms of, I think you understand what I'm getting at. Like, aren't so dominant in terms of like being on the field for,
workhorses. You don't need to be a workhorse. You don't need to be a workhorse. Like, I think though they give A-Chain workhorse carries at this point. I don't think he ever needed it really to kind of be that guy, right? He could do it with much fewer touches. And I think we see that around the league in general. Like, there are guys who can do that. So yeah, I don't think that, volume is going to prevent a really plus player from breaking out or being a fantasy, asset. So I guess that there's a differentiation there for me. I'm not sure he's the kind of guy who even in a committee could be super consistent for you from a fantasy perspective. So, I mean, that's just like,
that makes sense.
And I think that's where I probably differ than, some of the other analysts. Like, I see it. Like, I see the footwork. I see the fundamentals. I think they're there. I just think he's missing that, the dynamic ability that I think you need to make a difference.
Yep. Makes sense.
All right. Next one. I tasked these guys with trying to find any type of film whatsoever on. I was turned on to him by my buddy Connor LaPlante. He was part of Peter Howard's Discord and all the great people who have learned there at the school of PA Howdy. So this kid, his last season was Arizona. His season before was at University of New Mexico, and then he played 3 years before that Alabama State. So this is a guy who's actually technically had 6 years in college, although he only played one game last year at Arizona due to eligibility issues stemming from Alabama State.
And was it against New Mexico? Was it against the former team that he played for? Because it was against New Mexico. I know that, but was that the team that he was on before?
I think so.
That'd be bizarre if it was.
I think that's the only game he played with his former team. Yes. So anyway, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. We'll call him JCM going forward. Anyways, a buddy of mine turned me on to him. It looks good. It was easy to watch all the film you could find on him because there's not a whole lot. So
it took me all of like 20 minutes.
I watched nearly all of it. And he's fine. One cut runner, which is kind of nice. But I just wanted to point out that the year that he did break out was the year that he left Alabama State. He went to the University of New Mexico. He posted 1,200 yards-ish at 6.3 per carry and 17 touchdowns. But he's come into the league at 23. What are your film notes?
Super quick. I just had super static running style, lacks fluidity and movement. Stylistically, he's just very limited. He has 1 to 2 productive cuts and a nice shoulder drop. He reminded me a lot of the excitement that people had around Eric Gray coming out of Oklahoma. And it was just like, yeah, he has literally like these guys who have singular movements. It's awesome. It works really well in college. It just doesn't typically translate into the NFL, especially dude's going to be probably 24 when the actual season starts. Like, I just don't have a lot of confidence here that this is anything that I even want to touch. But, some of the moves and, breakaway runs that he made were exciting and I was happy for him. But yeah, I think it's going to stop there.
Good for you.
He does run a 4.4.
I mean,
that's good.
I'll tell you what, he didn't run a 4.4 on tape. Like, I did not do that. He definitely picks up some speed. I think he's kind of more like of a build up. He has more build up speed than he does like just natural like speed, and definitely I don't think it's anything that can really translate in my opinion. But I kind of agree with you guys. Upright runner whose best asset is footwork, vision, pass catching, outstanding hands downfield. I was actually really impressed by that part of his game. Like, you see full extension, like in the end zone, downfield, like 30 yards down. There's a couple of these in the limited tape, which you kind of know, you're like, okay, that's part of his game. So I was kind of impressed by that. Good vision to navigate the line of scrimmage, good athleticism, but lacks plus lateral agility despite exhibiting good evasiveness. He definitely does make guys miss, but again, it's pretty limited. I do think, the one cut comment is kind of indicative of what he does. And Jake also mentioned, 1 or 2 moves, and then that's about it. I agree there. I do think he uses his size and strength pretty well, displays above average balance, but limited tape in general. So it's really hard to gauge all of these things. I thought I really think he lacks hinge fluidity in general. I don't think he has great bend at the hips, knees, all that. And I think that's kind of why you see that like one cut nature of his game. I didn't see great, yards after contact, in my opinion. Fundamentals were fine, but it just nothing impressive. I will say, I think that he, you see when he really gets to top speed is like short, choppy steps. And I do think they provide an advantage generally for him in like the short area quickness department, where he does kind of excel at evading, but it also limits his top speed due to the lack of like full extension from his legs. And it's some of that hinge fluidity, that lack of, just fluidity in his running style. I think he's just kind of stiff. And so you kind of put it all together and you're just like, I don't know if this is going to translate at the next level, on a consistent level at all. So that's where I land on Ja'Cory Crosskey Merritt.
Yes. So Ja'Cory Crosskey Merritt, another guy. I can't even do this honestly with you guys. Like, he played one game, so I have data from one game. I went back just because Billy hooked me up last year too, and I had PFF's data for the year that he was at New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say, as a blanket statement, his peripherals were fine. If I look at the one game from last year, he looks like he's otherworldly. But 53.8 missed tackles forced, 211 elusive rating. But this is just their grading for one game, so I don't have anything to add. Not really. Not at least in good faith.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to add is that this is now the third or fourth player that I've heard of that basically has gotten fucked in the NCAA that had like a relatively decent shot. Yeah, that had a relatively decent shot at like making it into the pros potentially, but ended up getting screwed with eligibility issues. And the worst part is for him is that it sounds like his fifth year with eligibility, or I guess technically his fourth year with eligibility going into his fifth year with eligibility, he really had a decent shot statistically to potentially, go directly into the NFL. And might have, even with like a weaker running back class, had a better shot at getting into either the draft class or coming in as an undrafted free agent. So it's really disappointing for him to have maybe been advised to go against that. So that's the only thing I wanted to add, because it is really sad. I remember Dante Miller, an undrafted free agent that the Giants picked up last year, got like absolutely like triple fucked by like 3 different schools. They all messed up his eligibility paperwork throughout the way, and then he got onto like either like Columbia or old, I don't know. I think he went from like Columbia to like a SEC school at the end, and then they botched it. And then he just sat out his entire last year. So he was basically a year removed from football. Like that just shouldn't be happening to players. Like, make this stuff more transparent so that these guys have the best path.
They shouldn't be questioning whether he redshirted, because that's what it was. They were like, we don't know if he redshirted his freshman year at Alabama. It's like, bro, where are the records? Like, get this shit straight. Like, this isn't on him to like track his eligibility necessarily. It's on the NCAA if that's going to be a rule. It's like, I don't know. It's
Meanwhile,
crazy.
You have quarterbacks going back to like their 8th year. So make it make sense.
Yeah. I mean, Well, real quick, I just wanted to say I forgot to mention the grade on these two guys, so I did want to say that Tahj Brooks actually got a pretty decent grade. I will say 65 out of 100. That's a pretty solid grade. So despite my lackluster, comments, I guess, and I'm sure it sounded that way, I did give him actually a pretty solid grade. And then Ja'Cory is in the mid 50s. So nothing great there. You don't want to be in that range at all. So we can move on.
Cool. Next one, picking up some steam. Australian thought there. Anyway, Damien Martinez, Miami, Florida. What do you got, Jake?
Yeah, really exciting. Honestly, I hadn't watched much of him at all until we dropped it into the Discord chat. Georgia Tech, FSU. It was 2 interesting games for him. Just to talk a little bit about Damien, some historicals. He came from Oregon State, where I believe he played 3 years. One of the interesting things I had heard, it was either on RSP or potentially on JJ Zachariason's pod, where Matt Waldman popped in. He was talking about Martinez's usage, because I think a lot of the flaws or concerns that people had are actually around his general usage at Miami, which really didn't show a ton of receiving reps, and also just had him really running basically on the inside, which I thought was really interesting. So in Oregon State, he had a lot more tape showing outside leverage, being able to show a lot more vision. And just wanted to add that because I didn't watch any of that. So I'm really just talking through the things that I saw in those two games. But I found him to be really chameleon-like. Like, I found individual reps to be very different from one another. And I felt like that was really just like a ton of game intelligence of like understanding defensive schemes, being able to attack them in different ways. He had a higher end skill set at pass pro. I found that his pass blocking was, I don't typically talk about blocking, but his pass protection was next level. It really stood out to me. Very patient runner. I found that he was capable of also trotting. He's very elusive, tends to stay in a singular lane in a singular rep. And by that, I just mean like he almost has like multiple personalities within his game, and he knows how to kind of like stray too. So if he stays in an inside lane, he almost like runs with his shoulders. If he stays on the outside and he's more vision oriented, his head's up and he's looking through the field. You don't really see that with a lot of players. So I found that to be a very unique aspect to his game. He does miss the elite speed. Like, that's just not him. I think you just have to accept that. But I don't think that that's necessary with his rest of his running style artillery. The caveat here is that I do think that he works really, really well in literally all the phases of a running back play that you want. So from what I saw, that was inside, gap, outside, in space, in open fields, and when he was also just receiving screens, dumps, etc. So all in all, I really, really, really liked what I saw to Damien Martinez, and he is someone I am very curious to see how the rest of the community is going to be looking at as we start looking at ADP and things coming out of the draft capital, things like that. So, yeah, what about you, Billy?
Yeah, it's so funny, man, that you and I, because we obviously chopped it up like 15 minutes before we got on the pod or whatever for a few seconds about these guys, and that was the first time we've actually like gave a hint to like how we feel about any of them, and it was pretty similar, which is pretty crazy. So I just always want to mention that. I'll look at the yards per team attempt thing in a second when we get there on Damien Martinez. I'm sure it's a thing in the spreadsheet with the university name. Not a big deal. Damien Martinez, this was absolutely my favorite of this group and one of my favorites I've watched in a while of this class, probably. Got a really high grade for, in general for my grading scale, but also just for this class. I was really impressed. Very, very enjoyable tape in my opinion. And like Jake said, like very versatile. And so like the way I'm going to describe him almost sounds like a juxtaposition, but I do think it makes sense. So a big body, quick twitch workhorse style running back, which is kind of, I don't think everybody would put those two things together most often, like a big body, quick twitch guy, but that is kind of how he plays. Angry and a powerful runner, well-rounded as a rusher, but extremely, extremely limited in my opinion as a pass catcher. Not just, I had to go look up after I saw the tape. I'm like, all right, let me go see how many passes this guy even like caught. And it's like nothing, but on tape, there's also some drops in short area. And so I don't even think the hands are really great. And so there may be something there to develop at the next level. But again, when they don't do it in college, they usually don't do it at the next level. So I don't think it's going to be a huge part of his game anyway. But that's definitely a concern. And if that wasn't a problem for him, he would have graded very, very highly. So definitely disappointed that that's not there. Displays excellent athleticism given his size, near elite bend, and above average speed, burst, agility, elusiveness, and power. So he got, like, as far as athleticism goes, like extremely high grades. I thought that he moved so well for kind of the thickness that he carries, and it's really impressive to kind of see him move. Elite rush technique, in my opinion, in terms of footwork and balance. I think he stays upright really well in almost any situation, direct or indirect contact balance better with the latter, in my opinion. Great gait. I mean, his stance, his center of gravity, everything is kind of exactly what you look for from a running back, but also just the footwork is super, super decisive, like really sound, confident and sturdy footwork. And I think that's like something you don't see in a lot of running backs, but like when he puts his foot down, you know that's where he meant to put it. And he's putting it with such confidence that he can really use all of his athleticism to kind of burst through each step and, you know, evade tacklers, you know, be really agile. I was really impressed by this player. The only part was the ball skills. And just to be clear, like from, you know, to put in perspective, I should say, from a route technique perspective, I think he got like a 5, and the total you can get, I think, is a 10 in there. And then ball skills a 2. And you can also get a 10 there. It's really bad compared to a guy like Tahj Brooks, where it's like a 5 and a 6.5. You know what I mean? So that's really going to impact, obviously, his overall score. So I thought that was a pretty big negative for him, in my opinion. But quality pass protector, but I do think that he can be inconsistent at times. And I noticed something specific. He'll go ahead and he'll attack defenders sometimes without good balance, and he'll like basically slip or get beat by the defender. So that can happen at times. But when he goes in with good balance and he's you know, got a good base, he's really strong. And I think he actually has pretty good technique outside of that. So he didn't get a perfect score from me in terms of technique. More, you know, above average, middle range for him. I think the last point probably to make is that he's just got really, really good vision, I think, plus processing speed and good vision at the line of scrimmage, but also clearly diagnosing and executing. And it really, really shows up, in my opinion, at the second level. I think he really takes it to another level. Not, no pun intended, second level, but I think he takes it to another level. When he gets to the second level, he actually is like really now locked in, kind of can see things. And I think obviously the traffic clears up a little bit, so that might be why. But all in all, really impressed with this guy. As far as the rushing goes, like stylistically, I saw so much like Marshawn Lynch in just the way that he maneuvers traffic. It's and also his aggressiveness. I don't think he's as aggressive. I don't think like he's as powerful necessarily as like a Marshawn Lynch, but definitely still powerful and still great contact balance. And I think the movement in short spaces, the bend to be able to kind of set up defenders and then hit a jab step and really, really like exaggerate those movements is kind of what I'm talking about. And so I was super impressed by this player. And let me look at I'll look at his yards per team attempt. But what do you think from a data standpoint, Uriah?
Love it. Shout out. I forget. I think I honestly didn't even know his name is in the Discord. It's just like an L. But shout out to the guy in the Discord for bringing up Damien Martinez, because he was not something that we had talked about before. And I was kind of bored this weekend trying to put together, like, compile just the ranks of the guys that we've talked about. And we hadn't talked about it before. And by the numbers, it's pretty good. It's 4.46 yards after contact per attempt. His elusive rating per PFF is 126. Missed tackle force is 26.2, which is a pretty decent number. Billy's going to get us the yards per team attempt here.
1.3.
1.3. That's okay. Pretty good for a running back. Yeah, to be 1.3. Yard per route run, 0.98. So I'm not sure there with the pass catching exactly what's going on there, but he's an early declare. He played 3 years, and Jake said multiple different colleges. One thing that's really kind of crazy about him is that even not playing for the same team, you know, considering O-line and scheme and all that stuff, he never averaged less than 6.1 yards per carry. He's a good player. I think that this guy, given what ADP he probably is going to end up and draft capital and such, I think that, like, when you're talking about possible steals in a draft, I think that Damien's got to be on that list.
Yeah,
I like him.
Definitely agree there. I think the data is pretty solid. And the yards per out run, the reason it's actually okay, like, you know, near 1, is because he caught so few passes, but he actually was pretty successful. No, but he was actually pretty successful with them. I mean, 12 yards per reception, you know, all of last year. A couple big plays in a couple games got him there. So he's capable with the ball in his hands. We know that. It's just like, can he secure these targets, and is a team going to kind of use him in that full workhorse role? I don't really know, but I definitely think he has it in him. Like, I definitely think he has it in him. Yeah.
According to the ESPN's profile page for him, he didn't have any fumbles.
Love that. Love the ball security. Yeah. I mean, with a little refinement and potentially some development to kind of round out his game, he could be a threat at the next level. So I'll definitely be interested in him if he's. I mean, we'll see. I'm hoping he's somewhere in the third round. That'd be amazing if you can get him in that range. Like I would feel absolutely ecstatic about the early third for him. I wouldn't love if I have to push up into the late second personally, but
I don't think there's value there. So
we'll exactly. It all depends. Yeah.
All right. Next guy, Jaden Blue, Texas. If I remember correctly, he was fast as hell at the Combine or Pro Day. What do you?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm terrible. I'm terrible. I forgot to mention the score on this last one too. That's but 67 for Damien Martinez, which is actually a really good score. Again, Ashton Genty's like mid-low 70s. So just for like perspective on it. But
73 for you. So yeah. Just to be specific for the listeners. Jaden Blue. Doesn't make me blue. So Colorado State, UL Monroe were the two games that I was able to get tape on. I think that he will probably be a very high level receiving back in the NFL. Honestly, I think with his University of Louisiana Monroe. I think. Is that even a school?
I don't know. Yeah. Just wonder if you're making
it's why he looks so good, because I watched him against Colorado State and UL Monroe. No, but I think he's going to be a high level receiving back in the NFL. Great elusivity and space. One of the quicker players on tape, and it's nice to know that it actually matches to the actual clock as well. One of the biggest things I noticed that he was actually able to truly explode into gaps. We haven't really seen that too much within this class, so it was just kind of refreshing to see. Very instinctive runner with minimal vision from behind the line, though. So he just kind of goes off of vibes. Kind of reminds me sometimes of like DeAndre Swift in that regard, where you're just like, why did he make that move? And it just looks like he's just moving because that's what his body's telling him to do. Very similar to people who play what's that game with the circles on the floor, and you spin the thing and there's like force. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, what? I forget what it's called. Yes.
I wanted to call it Bop It, but it's not that. I think I played that game like once. It's how. That's
what is it called? Depressing. Oh my God, that's crazy. I can't think of the name of that. Yeah. All right.
Anyway, I do think there's a lot of room for him to learn.
It's called Twister.
Twister.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, that's it.
It's a terrible name for that game. Whatever.
It really is. I don't think that that's like indicative of how the game is played at all. I guess it's the idea that you're like twisting and contorting your body. But like when I think of Twister, I think of the film, and I think of like a cyclone. Anyway, that's not why we're here. Yeah, I think there's lots of room for him to learn. I did not do cocaine before this, I swear. And there's lots of room for him to learn.
I don't believe you.
I don't either. And my biggest thing on Jaden Blue is really going to be that if I think he finds himself defined roles, he'll be limited in a fantasy landscape. But I do think that if he's able to fit into a room, i.e. is a really bad example, but I think like a room that's really minimal, like the Giants, there's a place for him to take over that room. It's kind of similar to a lot of like what happened for Bucky Irving. It's like if you're going up against a counterpart that has similar skills to you that you can outperform, and I no offense to Tyron Tracy, I just think that there were good things last year, and I think there's bad things. Jaden Blue has a lot of the same capabilities, and I think he can actually do it at a higher level. And he has a little bit more background as a running back, which might help him. So that is a good place for someone like him to potentially be a higher level asset in a fantasy landscape. But outside of that, I can see him easily being kind of buried in another team's depth chart too. So he's concerning, and he's really going to be draft dependent for me. Like I really need him in a team that I think that he has a proper direction for. What did you see, Billy?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely liked this player more than I thought I was going to like this player once I threw on the tape. I don't know. You just kind of think that he's going to be super, super limited, but there's a little bit more there. And the fact that he's so proficient as a pass catcher, I think is really going to help him. So I definitely agree with, the first part of your breakdown there. How I described him was a game-breaking pass-catching specialist who struggles with direct contact. unrefined rushing technique, questionable vision, but picks up at the second level. Outstanding athleticism, however, lacks power and physicality, but excels with speed burst and lateral quickness. Excellent receiver, exhibits great hands as well as route technique and transition speed. There's really like no hitch between, catching the ball and running. It's kind of all one motion, which is really impressive. I do think he misses the pass protection marks, like nearly got a 0 on technique. Very few reps in general, almost always leaking him out, but he may get in the way of a defender by accident, like if he runs into them or something like that. I just didn't see any reps in all of the tape that I watched, which was like 3 games, Ohio State, Clemson, Arkansas, and I was watching all 22, so I should have seen it. Anyone there. But from, a pass catching perspective, I was talking about, the total scores you can get there. He got an 8 out of 10 and a 7 out of 10, the rush and the route technique and the ball skills. Just, really, really impressive. Good ball tracking, secure hands. The only thing with him, and which is why he didn't get even a higher mark for the ball skills, I don't think he extends or attacks the ball as much as you would like, even though these are running backs, like, with those passes downfield, like that's kind of what we're grading there. The rush technique, like I just think he has inconsistent footwork leading to wasted movement steps. And he's greatly impacted by contact. He can definitely shed arm tackles and indirect contact. And I graded that, appropriately. But in terms of direct contact, I think, once he's hit, he's probably going down, and I don't see many yards after contact. So he also got a low grade from the yak ability, but everything else from an athleticism standpoint, he was getting, above average or near elite marks and kind of like the elusive burst speed departments, really agile. So yeah, I mean, he got a 60 out of 100. I thought he was pretty solid. And I think that, he needs a pretty specific situation to succeed at the next level. I do think, he gets into a place where he's going to mostly specialize in, the pass catching role, but could kind of eat into the rushing workload a little bit on a team where there's not like a, super established back or something, like Jake said, Tyrone Tracy, something like that. I definitely think that he could make an impact in the backfield like that. Not my favorite, not my least favorite. I do think he's a dynamic player, and that is something I do think that translates both to the NFL, but also for fantasy. So I think he has some more upside than some of these other guys, and he'll probably be their late 3rd, 4th round pick or something like that. So I'm not going to hate, taking a shot at him here and there, I'm sure, in some drafts.
All right. By the numbers, yards after contact, yards after contact per attempt is 3.83. Not great. The PFS has his elusive rating at 113. Missed tackle force percentage is 27.4, which is pretty decent. His yards per team attempt is 1. It's great. Yards per route run, 1.59. Awesome. Breakaway percentage, 39.6 is fine. Early declare. He checks a lot of the boxes. He's smaller back, isn't he? I guess it doesn't matter all that much, but just trying to like pull anything else from that, because everything that you see here seems like he's really good at catching the ball.
201. He's actually not. He's a pretty sizable dude.
But just I guess it's probably easy to go down with contact is what it kind of looks like here. So I like the guy. I'm not sure what he would end up in my rankings with this, but it's an interesting player.
Again,
boxes, especially if you want a receiving back.
He definitely checks the boxes of a receiving back, in my opinion. The yards per team attempt is a little low, like the 1.0, like that. I'd like to see them closer to like 1.5 and above. Personally, like I know that's maybe asking a lot, but still, I think if we're kind of grading these guys on a scale, that's going to be on the lower side of it for me. But however, like I think it all lines up. He's elusive. It shows that he does create some missed tackles for us. He is really good at receiving. You see all that kind of line up in the yards per out run, the missed tackles force, the elusive rating, but then not great in the breakaway percentage, the yak department, the yards per team attempt. So I do think that kind of makes sense.
He's early declare too, right? So he only spent 3 years in college, and then he's hitting the bigs. He didn't have to sit around like JCM after 6 years and then hit the NFL. So he's definitely NFL ready at a younger age than a lot of the other prospects this year.
And he sat behind Bijan, Roshan, and Jonathan Brooks. So he had a lot of competition while he was at Texas, and he's performed at a pretty high level this past year. Like, I don't want to take that away from him.
And he didn't enter the transfer portal. Good for him.
I would have.
Yeah.
Go
get that NIL
I'm out of here.
money.
All right, cool. Anything else you want to talk about with these guys before we hit the trade?
No, I think those were some good evals, some interesting lower end prospects. So yeah, I can't wait to see where these guys end up in the draft. I think it's going to really shift things around for where they actually go. Most excited personally, and I think as a pod, for Damien Martinez. And see if he gets some maybe higher draft capital than we expect, and maybe land in a spot that he can potentially take over the entire workload. That would be really exciting for us. But yeah, we'll see when we get there.
If he can creep into day 2, like end of day 2, I'm
We're
feeling,
gonna get juiced.
Yeah,
but then
you probably gonna have to take me off the screen because I probably can't.
But then the problem becomes you're not going to get him in the third round. If he goes there, he's going to end up at the late second. So you're going to have to make some tough decisions, and we'll obviously have those conversations if it happens that way. Yeah.
Good point.
All right. All right, trades and non-trades. We have one trade here. We have
just pissing your Cheerios.
Tavon Achane was acquired for the price of Breece Hall and 2 fourths. This is a trade that went down in the Discord. So I'll dissent. So I guess I'm the only one that voted on the Breece side. I just don't think that Breece is washed. I think Breece is way more talented. I think Breece has the build, the type, the pedigree to be in the league longer than Achane. And for that reason, I feel like you're getting 2 fourths. I did not look at any trade value charts or anything like that. I'm just basing it off of vibes and how I feel about these players going forward, specifically longevity and those types of things. But
I think that's where it comes down to, is that knowing that Breece's value right now is kind of taking a global hit via this weird Jets PR disaster. It's like, I wouldn't, if I want to get out of Achane into Breece, like, I just give me the additional plus that I know I can get. Like, there's no reason for me to add only 2 fourths and knowing that the gap is now bigger because the market's scared. So I hear you, and I don't disagree with any of the player valuation. I personally do think that Breece Hall is truly the better running back. I do think that, unfortunately, Achane probably is the better fantasy asset, though, especially if you're playing in leagues at true PPR. So if a running back is able to get true PPR, Achane's touching something like 55 to 70 receptions probably in 2025. That's just massive differentiation between him and Breece. And so that would be my only counter argument, is like, if I'm going to get off of Achane, knowing that the market likes Achane, pay up. Like, whoever wants Achane, like, you gotta pay up. So send whatever that additional add-on is on top of Breece that isn't 2 fourths, because 2 fourths is basically nothing to me. So yeah, that's kind of just where my head was at when I saw that trade. But I don't disagree with any of your valuation in terms of player valuation. I think that that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, I think Jake kind of nailed my thoughts on this, honestly. Like, that, I agree. I think that he's the, more fundamentally sound running back, the more well-rounded running back, all those things, but he's on an absolutely dog shit team, which will change at some point. But, in interim, Achane is on a, really, forget about the team. He's in a really solid situation for what he does. And that can also change as well, of course. But I think, then you go and so those factors I take, and then I add them to, Achane's pretty much like running back 5 in the market. And then Breece Hall is like, running back 7, 8, whatever. And that's kind of it. Like, it's not a far drop, but it is from a valuation standpoint, like in the dynasty market, like running back 5 and then below is kind of a big gap, when you look at it. And so if you're giving me maybe like a second here, then maybe I'm more comfortable moving on from Achane. So I don't think it's like super far off, but I just think the market is dictating this trade. And if we're like, you're not nervous about Breece, but the market is nervous about Breece. People are nervous about Breece. So we got to act nervous about Breece. If you're going to acquire Breece, the easiest thing you could say, if you get this offer and you want to acquire Breece, you're just like, listen, man, like, or whichever, you want to acquire Brees. Listen, I'm just a little worried about his situation, given all the talk from the Jets. Like, I need at least a second to get this deal done. I think that probably would work on a lot of people. So I don't think it's hard to get to where you need to get this done. I just think, and I understand why you wouldn't mind making the trade. So like, I totally get all the reasons. I just think that we got to take advantage of that market value as much as possible.
That's fair.
And that's why I have the Dynasty identity that I have.
That's just our responses go back to what we talked about the first.
It all full circle event.
Because I look at that trade, I'm like, yeah, that works. And you're like, whoa. What else do we do here?
Hold your horses. Give me something else. But I do think that it's fair to ask for that given the situation. So it's an interesting trade, and I do think that the advantage that A-Chain can give you on a game-to-game basis, given kind of what we see in his situation, allows for that kind of framework for a trade to work. So don't be afraid to ask for a little bit more with this kind of deal. Would be my
and I know Billy brought up dynasty value, but also if we just look at startup ADP over the last 7 days, because I think that's when the Brees Hall stigma change happens.
Yeah.
You're talking about seven spots already. So that's a four position drop. Before, I think it was A-Chain was up about 3 spots, and now it's 7. So you're talking, it's about half a round, probably a second, I think is what Billy said. That's probably pretty accurate. You might even be able to squeeze out like an addition. You probably could even add those 2/4 on top of it and be, a second and 2/4 on top of Brees. That's pretty nice. That's what I'd rather do. But
yeah,
and don't, we're all on the same page.
Don't hear what we're not saying. Buying Brees is actually good business, and one of the few running backs I wouldn't mind getting into this time of year, to be honest, because like we're talking about, over the long haul, his situation is not going to be what it is now. He is a very young, very, very talented running back. I do not mind buying that in the offseason for a low price. You're also getting him super undervalued from where he probably will end up 6 months, a year from now. So given the right team situation where you can kind of take on a little bit of risk, absolutely you should be going after Brees Hall. Contender type teams, whatever, who have a little bit extra draft capital later, go throw out some 2 seconds in a Jacoby Myers or something, I don't know, whatever, see if you can go snag a Brees Hall for nothing. But I'm sure there's somewhere between that and Brees Hall, it's a terrible, probably somewhere between that and Brees Hall that is a comfortable place for you to be as a buyer, though, is my point. So
definitely
goes back to my dynasty identity again. God, all right, let's get out of here before I dig myself.
2 seconds, Jacoby Myers. Yep.
You just had to come up with something. But yeah, we get what you're trying to say, though.
It's like,
anything else?
Wait,
3 seconds. 3 seconds. I'll throw a third on top, guys. Come on. Come on.
It's a real good deal.
I think we're good. This is the shortest episode I think I've been a part of. So thank you.
Oh, wow.
Right. We're getting somewhere here.
Uriah says, "Thank you, Jake. Thank you."
Well, I love talking. It's just timing. But yeah. So for all the listeners, really appreciate you all. Definitely tell other people about our Discord. It's a great, happy place. Even though Billy has abandoned us,
I'm coming back.
We like to talk about what you guys like to talk about, and so I appreciate all of you. Follow us on socials. We're on those socials, and other than that, check out the YouTube, everything else that ends Dynasty Underdog, and have a good night.
Awesome. Peace out, guys.